Many communities want to start and grow their businesses, but they lack the financial capital to do so. Even when they think they found resources, sometimes those resources are extractive or burdensome. And what I mean by that is maybe the payment terms are create a hurdle, or they may offer stiff repayment penalties, unclear terms, or multiple hurdles just to get to a maybe you're approved. James Wahls is an impact investor, and he's also the founder of the Revolve Fund. Revolve offers compassionate, non-extractive capital to businesses led by Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color. To date, the fund has raised $1 million. They believe that financing shouldn't be a hurdle for people who are developing innovative solutions that will strengthen our communities. I want you to learn as much as you can about Revolve so you can refer people to Revolve, or perhaps if you're an investor, you can invest in Revolve. But I also want you to learn about this philanthropic initiative so that you can consider making an investment today or down the line. When you invest, you allow more people to receive help. James, thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you for having me.
So out of curiosity, why? Why did you found Revolve?
Oh, thank you for the question. So, I have spent years at this point trying to identify ways to increase access to capital within communities of color. So even in my previous roles, impact investing roles at the Keller Foundation and the NEKC Foundation, and even in my time I was a public finance attorney representing the city of Detroit and other municipalities, I've always tried to find ways to get resources to community, capital to community, and greater access to communities of color.
So in listening to you talk, it's clear that this is not your first foray into impact investing. Can you talk a little bit about your background?
Sure, happy to do so. So I really entered into the impact investing space in 2013. I came as a fellow, actually, at the W.K. Keller Foundation on the mission-driven investment team. There, I was fortunate enough to work with a great team of folks that allowed me to kind of step into the space and then kind of really get my footing. So at the Keller Foundation, I managed or co-managed a $100 million market rate portfolio. So it was a
did you say 100 million? I just want to make sure I'm following.
It was. So to be clear, the 100 million was already established. There was a team in place, and I was brought onto the team. So I was able to help co-manage that portfolio. In addition to that, the Kellogg Foundation had a program-related investment strategy, and I won't go into the details of that, but it was another component of impact investing where we were allowed to work with our program teams to develop interesting strategies. There is where I really was able to focus on access to capital strategies, including those in Detroit and New Mexico. And that portfolio, by the time I left, was roughly somewhere between $15 and $18 million. Afterwards, in 2016, I moved over to the Kellogg Foundation. There at the Casey Foundation. And at the Casey Foundation, I was able to continue that work around supporting access to capital within communities of color, including strategies in Baltimore and Atlanta. At that time, I also did a number of other impact investment strategies focused on affordable housing, quality job creation, future of work, and other things as well.
So, for a lot of people, the thought of managing or being anywhere proximate to more than $1 million is probably mind-boggling, right? So what did that feel like to you to co-manage that pot of money and to be able to do some good, with those resources?
So I will fully admit, I very much saw myself as a steward of capital representing an institution. So it was never my money. And so that automatically puts you in a place of humility to recognize that you're representing an institution. I also had great support teams. So I sat on investment teams both at the Kellogg Foundation and the Casey Foundation. So folks who had managed far more money than than the money that I was co-managing or working in, sat next to me and provided guidance and support as I was kind of thinking through strategies. But to be clear, when I remember when I first saw my first financial report and I saw the numbers, I was shocked. And this is coming from someone who worked on, bond deals as co-bond counsel that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars in my previous role. But you were like, I was just a lawyer. Like, I was sitting there representing the deal and make sure that the words were right. But then you have the principal responsibility of investing that money in the community, thinking about how that money is going to be returned, underwriting potential investees. It is a different pressure and it's a different feeling. And so that was something I had to get accustomed to. And to this day, I'm probably not 100% accustomed to it. And I don't even manage that money anymore. I moved on to a different role at Mission Investors Exchange. And even the work at Revolve, our deals which I know we'll talk about, are a lot smaller than the deals I was doing before, but I still take that same humility in every deal that I do.
I mean, but it's still quite significant because even to steward someone else's money, that's an experience that most Black people, I don't think that we will have. So it's still significant. Of course, it'd be different if it was your money, but it's still significant to be able to steward that. And I'm just wondering, how did that experience inform what you're doing now with Revolve?
What it taught me was that it is actually difficult to place capital in community in the right way. And then what I mean by that, in a way that the community can absorb it, that the right institutions are in place to take on significant amounts of money. So for example, the average size of a deal that I was doing when I was at the Kellogg Foundation and the Casey Foundation was $1 million plus. And so when you're placing $1 million within a community, you have to be mindful of how that capital is going to go in. You have to be mindful of what kind of pressure you're placing on the investee. You have to be mindful of, like, does the strategy make sense, right? There are a lot of unforeseen consequences that you have to think about when you're doing these types of investments. And so you have to really have a kind of a holistic perspective of what you're doing when you're placing capital at that size into the community. Also, it's very difficult to place $1 million on Main Street. And if you're thinking about investing in community businesses with the neighborhoods, if you're thinking about investing in startups that are not venture, when you're thinking about investing in nonprofits who have, budget sizes of $200,000, $100,000, maybe up to $1 million, you can't invest $1 million immediately into those institutions without placing a lot of pressure on them. And so for me, it was clear that there was a gap here. There was private foundations, the ones I worked at, most of them are, well-intended to try to address whatever their mission is. They do an excellent job, oftentimes, of managing their money correctly. The impact investment teams are, and I know many of them, of course, still because of my roles, do an excellent job of placing capital into community, but there are limitations to it. There are limitations to what terms they can provide, how they can provide that capital. And so for me, I felt like there has to be another way. There has to be even more than one way to provide capital in the most flexible way you can to help folks be in position to eventually take on impact investment capital or to take on market capital from a bank. And so those lessons and that approach, I pour into Revolve Fund. So when we think about Revolve Fund and what that strategy is a recoverable grant strategy. And I know a question about what is recoverable grants is coming. And so I'm prepared for that. But as we think about that strategy and we're putting capital into community, we're doing it at smaller amounts, but we are also utilizing many of the same impact investment principles that I bring to the table. And so when we talk and when we work with our grantees, I often tell them that, one, this is not like your friends and family capital. Even though I want to be your friends and family capital, I'm not your friends and family capital. I am bringing an investment lens to your recoverable grant, and I'm not thinking about my capital. I'm thinking about your next capital. I'm thinking about what are you going to do when you're ready to go talk to that bank for that larger loan, or when you go talk to that
So
CDO.
there's so much here. Let me stop
Oh
you
yes,
for a
please
second.
let me go.
There's so
You
much
got me
here.
going.
Okay, so first, let me ask you, for people who may not be familiar, what is impact investing?
So, and I think this is an important point. I often don't call Revolve Fund impact investment strategy. I call it a philanthropic strategy. And the reason why I do that, because as you define impact investing, it's really the intentional use of capital or money to drive some measurable impact and also achieve a financial return. So no matter what that return is, it's a return. You want your money back and you want to make some money off of it. And so, when I think about, the I would say the easiest examples or easiest way to kind of think about impact investing is when an institution or individual, it does not have to be like the large foundations that I talked about, or it does not have to be like Bill Gates or super wealthy person. It could be the individual that decides that they want to invest in a community bank or a community loan fund that's providing loans to those who are underserved, underfinanced within a community. So I take $1, I place my dollar at this institution, who then lends it out and gives and increases access to capital to a borrower who could not get money anyplace else, and it helps them build out their business. Hopefully, that money's paid back to the borrower, to the lender, and then me as an investor receives my money back plus a return. So anyone can be an impact investor. It's just a matter in terms of scale, size, capacity. Institutions oftentimes determines how much money you're going to place or you're going to invest as an impact investor.
Okay, so as a philanthropic initiative, talk to me about what Revolve does, and also if you can explain recoverable grants.
So why I don't call Revolve an impact investment is because while we want our money back from a recoverable grant, and I'll get to that shortly, we're not demanding our money back. We're not expecting our money back. What we're doing is investing in a way that gives folks an opportunity where they otherwise wouldn't have it. And what I mean by that is that we are providing the riskiest capital to put yourself in a position to go get more capital. When you're an investor, when you think about investment, sometimes that is the case. You are placing your capital as a bet to try to make money, and therefore you hope that whoever you're investing in makes even more money as they go get more capital, or they drive product, or they drive revenue. But for us, we're not seeking return. All we're asking for is our money back. So that's the first thing. So when we think about investing in the entity and investing in the person, what we're doing is providing our capital, placing our capital with them, and all we're expecting from our recoverable grant is to return our capital. Whatever they're able to achieve in terms of return, in terms of wealth, in terms of more capital, that stays with them. We just want our money back. And the reason why,
do you want your money back with interest?
We don't want interest. So when we provide this grant, we're not providing it as a loan. So even when we look at our finances, we don't treat our recoverable grants as like a loan portfolio. We don't treat it as an asset. We treat it as an expense. So when our money goes out the door, we want our money back, but we're not coming after you. So we don't have the covenants. We're not coming after the car. We're not coming after the house. We're not garnishing wages. We're not doing any of that. What we're doing
is that unusual, James?
Very much so.
Okay, yeah.
It's very much so. And oftentimes you will hear folks within impact investing or philanthropy say, we don't like recoverable grants because they're not enforceable, right? They are a grant. We're putting money out there and we cannot enforce it. So the burden is on me and my team and my fiscal host, Maryland Philanthropy Network. We're taking on the burden to identify those that want to pay us back, that want to be in a position to get the next money, to move up the capital spectrum, to go get venture capital, to go get CDFI capital, to build out their businesses, to increase their revenue, and at the same time want to pay us back. Why? And then the question is always like, why would they pay you back if they don't have to do it? One, reputation. So when you're thinking about, oh, we want to go get loans from someone, and they ask, well, we need a referral. Who do you want the referral from? You want from someone
person you pay back
that you pay your money back to, right? So we incentivize through character approaches. Another thing is, if you're in an impact investment space, you don't want me to be the one to say, by the way, they never pay me back as you're thinking about getting impact investment. I mean, I've built a strong enough reputation. My advisory team has a strong reputation. Other partners in the field, funders are in the field. We are here. You want a good reputation from us. Like, you want to pay us back, and you want to, make forth a good faith effort. We're not going to punish folks, and we're not going to go after people if they don't have a good faith effort. If they have a good faith effort in their strategy or in their business or in their nonprofit. And we try to identify those who want to put a good faith effort through our due diligence process, which is fairly robust. But the fact that you want to have good referrals when you do go to lenders, and we actually have stories of that in our portfolio, that you want to have strong partners and friends as you're navigating impact investment space. It doesn't hurt. To have a reference that folks can immediately call and are aware of. And finally, and this is something I didn't really truly appreciate. It wasn't until like our first year evaluation that it was really made clear to us that folks want to pay back. They want to pay back. Like, there's no. And, for me, it was great. Like, of course, we want you to pay it back. But I didn't truly internalize and appreciate how important it was for my grantees to really support the Revolve Fund effort. I didn't know how important it was for them to be an extension and to represent Revolve Fund. And that's been just something amazing. Like, I just didn't expect it. I wasn't thinking about it when I came up with the strategy. And my evaluator, who was the one that told me, he was Marcia Kingslow, made it clear. It was like, no, this is something that you didn't think about, but came out in the first year evaluation of how important it was for the grantees, and how appreciative they were that the advisory committee, myself, NPN, wanted to invest in them. And so for all those
That's
reasons,
wonderful.
I feel very confident that we would get return without having to do any type of enforceability on it.
That's wonderful. So speaking of the grantees, tell us about some of the projects that you funded. And I know that has to feel kind of special, right? To identify and then to fund these, but tell us about a few of those.
So I will admit, I am always honored to say that the Revolve Fund, and sometimes I use I know I shouldn't because it's real fun, but I just take such pride in partnership and working with some of these folks that I definitely internalize it. And it ranges. So we, as a Revolve Fund, we provide capital to intermediaries. And what I mean by intermediary is an organization that's collecting or aggregating a lot of capital and then dispersing in the community in a mission-aligned way. We do it directly to both nonprofits and for-profit entities. And the majority of them, almost 90% of them, of the capital goes to folks of color, and has gone to people of color. But at the same time, we've identified strategies that are not led by people of color, but they have intentional focus, they have a racial equity lens, and they are also committed to the mission of increasing capital access to people of color. And so just some of the strategies that I always find interesting. One strategy was a post-COVID strategy. It was actually our first recoverable grant. It was with really a DC base, but they have a strong presence in Baltimore. And because I'm based in Baltimore, have worked closely with them in my previous roles. They were providing 0% interest loans in response to the pandemic. So, and these loans were extremely flexible. They were doing this to help entrepreneurs who they were already working with, and this was a loan fund that they were already working with, or those who were applying for loans, but because of the pandemic had some hardships, they were looking for flexible capital that they could put out into community. And you couldn't do that with loans. But they wanted to show their ability for these entrepreneurs to repay. And so they were looking for a product that made sense. And I said, I have a recoverable grant product. Do you think this is a product that can work? And they ended up becoming my first recoverable grant. So my first recoverable grant in many ways was supporting an institution that was trying to help their entrepreneurs manage and go through the pandemic. And this was in 2021. Another interesting example is a direct investment that I did, and they've had a lot of coverage. It was a medical practice, and they changed the way they wanted to do kind of holistic family medicine, really starting with children, but then also thinking about the children's parents and guardians, and decided to move medical practice into community center. And so they did this in New York. They've been profiled in magazines and on TV and on radio, and I didn't know them. I did an interview, thanks to the person I'm talking to right now. I did an interview, and they sent a note to me, and they said, we're interested in Revolve. We're interested in the work that you're doing. Can we have a conversation? And I had a 20-minute conversation. I was blown away. And we just had to figure out, how do I support the work that they're doing? Another institution that we're supporting, and they are having a lot of success right now. They provide organic feminine products. They were based in Baltimore, and they have received money. They had raised capital, but they were looking for flexible dollars, and this is something that's very, very important. Flexible dollars are extremely important as you're building out strategies, whether they're nonprofit or for profit. And sparked up a conversation. Found ways to kind of partner with each other, and then they went through the underwriting process for Revolve Fund, and we provided them a recoverable grant, which they have now turned and raised significant amounts of money since then. It was funny. The founder recently did an interview, and they shared their story, and I thought, how amazing is this story? And I was like, wait a minute, I know this person. Like, I was listening to the story as if I did not underwrite them, as I did not know who they were, that we don't work together in spaces, but just listening to the story, thinking about alternative ownership, we have an intermediary, a loan fund that was developed that's really trying to support co-ops and employee ownership through the work that they're doing. We have a Black-owned loan fund out in Seattle who is trying to figure out ways to even provide more flexible capital, more flexible financing, debt financing versus like traditional amortized loans, which sometimes can be very harsh on businesses. So we are looking for ways, and we're looking for interesting strategies around the country where we are just want to like tell great stories and support great entrepreneurs and the work that they're doing.
That's amazing. So just a couple more questions before we wrap. Is Revolve in a place, like, are you looking for more investors right now? And if so, how do people find you?
Yeah, so yes, always. We're still fundraising, like we're still within our pilot mode. We've raised, again, I think you mentioned earlier, about $1.9 million. We just secured more capital yesterday, so I'm very, very happy. You probably see a glow on my face from that. But we're looking for more philanthropic partners. So to be clear, for those who want to provide capital to Revolve Fund, we don't provide a return. We only take philanthropic capital, so that's grants, donations, and non-returnable capital. And the reason why we do that is it allows us to take risks. It allows us to take chances on our companies and nonprofits that otherwise may not get capital. It allows us to take our time as we identify and work and provide technical assistance and business support to potential grantees. It allows us to provide what we call pipeline grants. So interesting strategies where recoverable grant from Revolve Fund doesn't make sense, but we like the work there so much that we find ways to support them. And all of this can be found on our website. So if you go to revolvefund.org, you can see the portfolio. You can see exactly how we define recoverable grants. You can see examples of our pipeline grants. You can see some of our partners. You can also see some of the institutions that have provided capital for our grant strategy, which include JP Morgan Chase, the Strauss Foundation, Annie Casey Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and others. I must have to acknowledge PNC Bank because they were our first institutional funder. So I cannot get off this call or this video without doing that. But overall, if individuals can go on the website, you can provide capital through our fiscal host at Maryland Philanthropy Network. There's a link on our website to that. Individuals can also donate directly. We have a direct link to the PayPal Giving Fund. You can also donate via PayPal as well to Revolve. So there are many different ways that you can give to the strategy. Institutional funders, we have a fiscal hosting relationship with Maryland Philanthropy Network, which is very important and provides comfort. We have established a 501c3 at this point, and so that allows us to take individual contributions as well. So
wonderful. And my final question to you is, I think prior to meeting you, I thought that when you're starting a business, that the one and only thing that you need was capital investment. But one of the things that I heard you say early on is that Revolve seeks to catalyze businesses. And then I heard you in this conversation say that you're not just worried about the capital that you provide, but the next capital. And I wonder if you could just close by talking a little bit about what it means to catalyze a business and why it's important to Revolve to think about, what's the next capital this entity is going to get.
So, I think about my experiences in impact investing. I think about my experiences as a social entrepreneur prior to that. And some of the toughest parts about the entrepreneurial journey, whether it's a for-profit entrepreneurial journey or a nonprofit entrepreneurial journey, is knowing where to go, knowing where to turn to, knowing how do I get resources? How do I find the right partners? How do I find the right board members? How do I find the right advisory committee members? What do I do when I reach a certain level? And how do I think about it? And oftentimes, there are one of the phrases that's often used, and I will not take credit for this. There are many folks who have used this term, social capitalism. So thinking about how do you achieve social capital? And Revolve Fund takes it very seriously. So when we think about capital, we're thinking about a holistic manner. We're thinking about bringing money to the table. We're also thinking about bringing ourselves to the table. So starting with me as the founder and managing director, but also the fiscal host, also our advisory committee, and they may not work directly with our grantees, but insights that come from them, they know I can call them at any time if I have questions. I'm also bringing my impact investing network to this conversation when I'm working with any of my grantees, social media access, public displays of support. Like, we try to bring all of that. And the reason why that is so important, because we want to help establish credibility. And so when I think about Catalyzing, I think about helping establish credibility to something that's already credible and working. Oftentimes, when we think about folks of color, we think about the work that they're doing, they're making money, right? When they're driving revenue, they are providing great products. They are, serving people, investing themselves, writing the business plans, doing the financial statement analysis. They're doing all those things. But sometimes it's a matter of, okay, I'm going to call this person for you, so you don't have to, get thrown in the waiting list, right? Or it's the okay, I'm going to give you capital, but I'm not going to constrain you. Like, you can use the capital in a way that makes sense. And I also want to understand, how are you thinking about it? So instead of constraining you, I will think about, well, I may not know something, but someone else may know, right? How can we increase your public image, if that's important for your business or your revenue stream? How can we, these are the types of things that we want to bring to the table. These are the ways that we're trying to bring social capital to it, beyond just the 0 to 100,000 or $1,000 to $100,000 that we could bring to an entity from Revolve. What we're really looking to do is to say, okay, you got our $50,000. That's wonderful, and you got operations taken care of. You got your product that you were purchasing. You figured out how to generate revenue. Now the question is, all right, now how are we going to get you $200,000? How are we going to get you $1 million? So that means, all right, have you put yourself in a position where you have visibility, maximum visibility? Have you hired the right consultants? Oftentimes, when you get capital from institutions, it's constrained. You can't hire the consultants that you need, like the accountants, the lawyers, all those kinds of things. Those are the questions that we try to help businesses address as they put themselves in position to get the next capital. So we're bringing capital and a whole lot of questions to
capital and a whole lot of questions.
Capital and a whole lot of questions.
That's great. So I know I said that was my last question, and this is my absolute last, and it ties into the questions part. So when Revolve goes in, Revolve is going in with capital and also a network. do you, and I know that for a lot of people, or for some people, there's trauma associated with money. And
Mm.
it could be how that person, their experiences growing up, or their experiences starting and trying to run a business. But do you encounter people who are dealing with like shame issues? So maybe when you start unpacking those questions, it can be difficult.
Yes. So some of my toughest stories, or some of my most interesting stories, are um, not those stories with the grantees. It's the ones who didn't apply for the recoverable grant. That I think that sometimes is the hardest pill to swallow when you're doing this work. And I recognize, and this also came out in the evaluation, that sometimes it seems unbelievable. Like, I think you heard me say in this conversation that I'm looking for folks to invest in, but I'm not demanding a return. If you can't pay me, like, I will be unhappy, but it'll be okay. and and I'm trying to offer all the support I can to help you get to your next stage, with recognizing that I'm not trying to get um, a significant financial return from you. When I say it, I'm like, oh, this goes against everything I've done in impact investing.
Right.
like it
Right.
does. And I didn't realize that it's difficult for folks in the community to believe you. Like, I'm walking, oftentimes I walk in spaces and people will say, we don't know who you are. Like, we've never seen you before. Like, I may know one or two people in a space. And so we don't trust you. I see interesting strategies, like sometimes when I'm combing through my social media, or I'm reading newspapers, or I'm reading um, you know, um, news magazines and other periodicals. And sometimes I identify and I reach out to people and say, like, hey, like, I think I have a capital solution that makes sense. There's absolutely no pressure. I encourage you to go to the website. I'm pretty visible. Like, if you Google my name, like, my LinkedIn page is open. Like, you can see who I am, and I get no response, oftentimes. And then I will find out later that that person took a loan, or did something that was from a traditional financial institution that they trusted, and they went through that process. I can tell a story where folks don't apply because they feel like they're not ready to go through my process. They're not ready to go through the due diligence process. Oftentimes, I've heard the narrative of, I want to get my stuff together before I apply, because, like, they've been rejected from banks, and
Absolutely.
because the only capital they get is high interest rate capital,
Yeah.
because they found some type of issue within the application. But the problem is, like, because because of who we are and what we do, we're not going to go after you, like, to try to, like, how, like, lenders will keep calling you over and over and send you letters and letters to try to get you to take their bad loan at some point. We're not going to do that. And sometimes people just never come back. You tell them, you lay it out, you give them the information, and you say, all you have to do is apply. And I say, like, don't worry about your if your balance sheet's not balanced, then let's figure out why it's not balanced. Like, and I will say, you don't have audited financials. Good, most folks don't have audited financials. You still should apply, right? And you try to encourage it, and because of, like, the trauma we've experienced within the community, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen
That's
sometimes.
hard. That's hard for me sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, thank you for what you do in the world. Thank you for having the courage to dream and then to act in terms of creating Revolve. And I hope that I know we talk, but I hope this will not be the last conversation like this.
It won't be. Because you won't let it be. For sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
I'm just saying it politely.
That's right.
All right. Well, take
Oh,
care.
thank you. Thank you so much.